coming up with a product or an idea, like it's a completely different world and mindset than it is. You have to basically put my Dance 200 face on, versus my engineer face, because it's night and day difference.
I love it, Justin. One engineer selling to 25 dance majors.
Yes.
Hello and welcome to the Fractional Executive Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Kauth. The Fractional Executive Podcast is for established founders and family enterprise owners whose businesses are in the $500,000 to $10 million revenue range and are currently stuck on a plateau of no growth. My guest today is Justin Vannieuwenhoven. Justin is the founder of Shebikin, a pedal tours company, and Sheboatin, another pedal tours company, but he also manufactures as well. Has founded Vinnie's Vinyl and 3-in-1 holders. And when he's not working on those side businesses, he's usually at his full-time gig, which is owning and operating a nuclear density moisture gauge company. And then in his spare time, he works with high school student entrepreneurs as a mentor for an entire school year. So please welcome Justin to the podcast. Now, in order to help you grow your business and get it off that terrible no growth plateau, we need to get more great guests like Justin on the podcast. So to do that and help you grow your business, please share the podcast, like and subscribe, follow the podcast, and leave us a 5-star review. And again, this helps us grow the podcast, get great guests on here like Justin, and help you grow your business. And we also want this to be interactive. So please leave comments and feedback for Justin and I so we can get back to you. Reach out to us and contact the show. So Justin, thanks again for being on the podcast. Yeah. So, Justin, you've been an entrepreneur a vast majority of your life. You've invented products, you've founded multiple businesses. Tell us a little bit about how you got started and your journey up to now.
Yeah, so a vast majority of my life, it's kind of hard to hear it stated that way, as I'm only 32. I just turned 32 a couple days ago. But yeah, there's a couple of different stories, kind of how I began into entrepreneurship and just kind of inventions and product development. So the first kind of like intro to entrepreneurship was Vinnie's Vinyl. When I was in high school, I used to race dirt track cars. And one of the most expensive parts of that as a high schooler was buying stickers for the car. So I had no clue about business or really anything in terms of how to create vinyl or how to sell vinyl or get customers. But I anticipated that if I bought a machine and got some software, I would be able to figure it out. And that's essentially how it became to be. So I bought a super cheap vinyl cutter off of eBay. I had some software that came with it, and then just started making stickers. So although I didn't really know what ROI was at that point in time, my mindset was if I could get at least like 5 or 6 of my friends to buy vinyl from me, that it would make everything break even and we would be profitable. So I did that, got 5 or 6 friends to buy stickers from me, but then it kind of spurred or dawned on me, like, why don't we try to get more customers or reach out to more people to see how we could grow this? So when I was in college, what I would do was Facebook was starting to become, more prevalent then. And I would go on the racetrack's websites and look at their point standings and basically look up the people that had raced the night before and look them up on Facebook and then send them messages and just one by one send out messages trying to grow the business and get more customers to get vinyl made by us. So I did that through college pretty regularly, just primarily for race cars, but then expanded into some other areas as well. So that's kind of how that was the first kind of business that was not actually supposed to be a business, just more of like a hobby and, side little project became to be, but was certainly integral, in becoming an entrepreneur. And then there's the, product side of it, which is obviously a bit different than the entrepreneur side of it, which I was heavily involved in invention and business plan competitions in Madison, where I went to college, and entered and won a number of different invention and business plan competitions there.
So Justin, I want to make sure I get this in here and I don't forget. But, one of the great things about you is you look at things differently and you do things differently. And I know you've got some great stories about how you network differently, because I know there's airplane stories about that. But just give me an idea about how you look at things differently, like networking, and how that also has given you success in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a key part of entrepreneurship that's often overlooked. I mean, my mindset in terms of just networking and meeting people is literally every single person on this earth is better than me at least one thing. So there's something that everybody has that I can learn from. Whether that's your janitor at your local Walmart all the way up to a CEO of a billion-dollar company. So I've been extremely fortunate, and maybe it's just me talking to too many people, but meeting people at different locations, different events, and just different places in the world. And I've been extremely fortunate to actually meet a number of really incredible people on flights. So I don't travel a significant amount, but every time I do travel, I think every person, when you get on a flight, you kind of walk down the aisle and you like kind of creeping on like, where's my seat, and I hope I don't sit next to that person, and you're like trying to find like the right person that you're hoping you sit next to. um, and I have about 3 or 4 different people that I've met that were extremely successful on flights. But one thing that I like to point out when I tell any of these stories is you really don't have an opportunity very often in your day-to-day life that you get to sit next to somebody for 2 to 4 hours, let's say, on a flight, where it's like there's no wall in between you. I mean, it's just you two, and if you want to strike up conversation, you can, but you can also just sit there in silence. So most people do that. But I found, I don't know if it would be thinking about things differently, but I think sometimes people just have kind of like an aura or like a look to them where you're like, I just need to know about this person. Whether it's the Tide hat or whether it's their, unique glasses, or just kind of like, what their appearance is. Sometimes you're just kind of like, I have to know this person. Like there's just something about them. So the most notable story in terms of meeting people on flights was about 5 years ago. I was traveling to Atlanta for a wedding. The wedding was in Oklahoma, but the flight was from Milwaukee to Atlanta. And I sat down to this little old lady who had these like bright orange eclectic glasses on, and she had to be, now I know she was late 60s then, just a little lady, and she was just like cute and put together, and I'm like, I have to know who this is. And I always like to joke, it's kind of like trying to pick up a girl at the bar or something, where it's like, how do I talk to this person, not make it weird? So she was paging through an industrial or interior design magazine, and she had bookmarked a black kitchen. So if you know anything about kitchens or interior design, like most people never have black kitchens because black will make everything look smaller. So if you have a black kitchen, like it's usually pretty big in a pretty impressive house. So I asked her, I was just like, oh, are you an interior designer? And she's like, oh, what gave it away? And, showed me the magazine, and just kind of struck up conversation from there. And that woman turned out to be Peggy Ann, who is the one of the moguls on Project Pitch It, which is a TV show similar to Shark Tank in Milwaukee. And I've become extremely close with her. We essentially are next to family now. Going to her house. Her birthday's today, so I'll be going down and having dinner with her tonight. But just the connections, the stories, the mentorship, the friendship that I've gotten from her over the last 5 years is, just incredible. And literally that never would have happened if I wouldn't have been on a flight next door.
Justin, your journey with the different companies that you founded, sometimes are around products, right? And so there's a difficulty in going from inventor to entrepreneur to having a business around those products. What did you personally find most difficult from inventing the product to founding companies around those products?
I'd say everything, but I assume you want more specific of an answer than that, so I'll be a little bit more detailed. Um, I'm gonna try to like tie in a little bit of a story, so this will be more relatable for people, especially that are in like the college age bracket. So when I was in college, I was an engineer, and 99% of the classes that I took were predominantly male. They were very analytical, tables, charts, graphs, numbers, boring presentations, all of the above. And when I was a senior, I had, at that time won a number of different competitions on campus that all needed pitches. So we were required to have a Com B class, which was basically like it's not an expert level, but like a higher level, like communications class. And all engineers typically took, it was like a fundamentals of engineer print presentations or something along those lines. And I had convinced my advisor to let me take a class called Dance 200, which was writing the moving body. And I primarily took it because you could at that time see, what the average grade was for the class, and like 90% of the students got A's that took that class. But I also knew that, like, being an engineer, there was probably likelihood of much more diverse demographic of male to female ratio. So I decided to take that class. So when I took that class, it was essentially one engineer surrounded by 25, plus dance majors. So the class was essentially more about effective communication more than it was really like writing itself. So what I would like to kind of like make this full circle is the thing that I found the most difficult is, as an engineer, your product that I even then was working on, it's like, take that and then sell that to 25 dance majors, right? Like, it's just, we didn't even speak the same language. Like, it wasn't even close to the same mentality of product development, et cetera. I mean, a lot of that had there was no interest to them in terms of, the engineering aspect of it. So everything that I thought that was most important about the product or the product development cycle meant nothing. So I think just that experience, and even today, coming up with a product or an idea, like, it's a completely different world and mindset than it is. So I always, and still today, I mean, I've gotten much better at it, but it's like, you have to basically put my Dance 200 face on, versus my engineer face, because it's night and day difference compared to, blending them together.
I love it, Justin. One engineer selling to 25 dance majors.
Yes.
The viewpoints like that are why this podcast exists. And so if you're stuck growing your business and you need more viewpoints like Justin's, again, share the podcast, leave us a 5-star review. Please subscribe and like the podcast and follow us and interact with us. Drop some comments and feedback below. And again, what that'll help me do is grow the show to get more great guests on here like Justin, Tide hat and all, and then you get those viewpoints to help you grow your business. So, obviously there's a whole bunch of fun stuff about you, Justin, but the way that we met was really based on the fact that you spend a lot of time mentoring young entrepreneurs. And so what do you see in them that maybe reminds you of you at that age? And how are young entrepreneurs today different than you were back then?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's hard to summarize all of the students that I've mentored kind of into one group, because I think each of them have their similarities to me, as I was as a younger entrepreneur. I typically gravitate towards the students that have product ideas, which I think a large difference from when I was younger to, how old I am now, is that I think there's a lot more tech-based ideas versus what there used to be. And I think that's just because of the world that they're growing up in, where, I think that although there are product-based companies obviously being formed every day, I don't think they're in your face as much as they used to be. So the success stories are kind of the, like, I don't know exactly how to explain it, but what they're seeing as success are YouTubers, people that are creating social media platforms, etc. Where I think, 15 years ago, it was a bit of a different scene where, the success story or what was thrown in your face in terms of what, you wanted to get to was not necessarily tech. So I think that would be the biggest difference that I see. And then in terms of the similarities and kind of why I do it, I mean, not all the students are like this, but, there's students that they don't really have any other chances. I mean, like, this is their backs against the wall. Their parents work 3 jobs. They have, this could be their out. Like, this could be their only way that they can truly, break that cycle of having to work 50, 60 hours a week and having no life and, working minimum wage. So, any opportunity that I can give to those students or just help them, feel confident in themselves or actually, have somebody believe in them, I think is why, I continue to do it. And some of the stuff that I, used to think or see in myself that I wish, I would have had. So one of the most powerful experiences I had was when I was in college. I had the most memorable invention competition that I was in. I got 4th place in, and I have won number of them after that, but that was the most influential one because like somebody believed in me, but like not just me, but my product. So I think like providing that stability and like belief in somebody's idea or just kind of their like mindset or process can be truly everything that they need to take off and be successful.
Yeah, Justin, how do you alluded to this earlier, I think, but how do you know when a new idea for a new product is worth developing further?
I think that mindset is starting to change a little bit than when I kind of first began. When I first began, I didn't surround myself with the same type of mentality people, or they were just thought a bit differently from me. So when I would see an idea, I would essentially, kind of have to vet it out in my own head, which I still do. But I think more recently, I almost just sit back and listen more. And then when you hear the issues that people are having, I can like pick up on opportunities within that. So there was an example yesterday. There was a customer that I was talking to and was essentially complaining about, some issue that they were having. And then like my mind meant essentially it automatically goes to like problem solving mode. Like, okay, what's the quickest, cheapest, and easiest way to like solve that problem? And then is it scalable? And I think just a lot of times after you've done it a number of times, you can kind of just like gut check the numbers. Like, okay, what's someone, average person gonna pay for this? What do we think we can run the numbers for, scalability? So I think over time it's just the gut test. But, at the same token, it's extremely beneficial when other people are telling you their problems and multiple of them. The reason why we started Sheboatin is because when we were on Shebikin, it was literally annoying how many people would tell us, hey, you should create a Shebikin on water. And it was just like over and over and over again. So, Shebikin on water, and for you listeners, so Shebikin is a pedal tavern that I built in Sheboygan. And we had changed one of the routes to go by the riverfront. And, when the riders would see the water, they just made the connection like, oh, why don't we have this on the water? Like, just put the two together. And then 1 year later, Sheboatin was born, and now we have 3 of them. So,
Justin, in your own founder leadership development, you're a product developer by nature, and maybe by nature you're not a strategic person or a visionary person. So what were some of those struggles you had as your businesses grew, kind of going from product developer, engineer mindset to being more visionary and more strategic?
yeah, I mean, I still struggle with it. Peggy, who I had mentioned before, she pushes me very, very strongly all the time. She says that you need to stop working in the business and you need to start working on the business, which is a very short kind of phrase, but it's extremely powerful. And that's really hard for engineers to do because you oftentimes want to make the product perfect. But the value in not making a perfect product is it makes it available for you to make iterations and improvements down the line. So you have to like leave yourself opportunity to grow. But I still struggle with that, that and not thinking big enough. I have a good, I think, mindset and strategy when it comes to diversifying and coming up with different ideas. But, getting all of those ideas to, 7-8 figure businesses is, that takes a different kind of mindset. And it takes patience too, right? It doesn't, I mean, some people are capable of growing them instantly. But when you're trying to run 3-4 companies at once, at some point you have to just work on that growth and not just work on the product development side of it.
Justin, thanks so much for being on the podcast today. I want to give you some time to tell our listeners and viewers how to get a hold of you and then talk about some of the projects you're working on because you have all this spare time.
Yeah, and all the spare time, there is quite a bit still going on. So, in terms of reaching out to me, you guys can honestly text me if you want to. My phone number is 920-676-3289. Pretty much an open book, so you guys can text me, call me. Otherwise, if you want to send me an email, my email is Justin, Justin, at A as in Apple, T as in Tom, S as in Sam, N as in Nancy, U as in Umbrella, C as in Charlie.com. Feel free to reach out with any questions, comments, concerns, disagreements, agreements. I'm happy to chat about all of them. In terms of the things that I'm working on right now, I was extremely fortunate to be asked to join the SEEDC board, which is the Sheboygan County Economic Development Center. So I'm on that board along with I'm the head of the innovation committee. So, we just launched an accelerator program that just wrapped up, which has been incredible. The outcomes have been much higher than I anticipated, which is great to see. So, continuing to stay involved in the innovation and entrepreneurship kind of scene in Sheboygan. Personally working on some commercial real estate stuff. We're looking at adding a different addition, like a new branch to the current Gauge company, getting into some more different services, which no one probably knows about. And then, the goal is to really try to push Sheboatin, the Pedal Tavern Boat Company, forward in the future. We have an investor that's been banging on the door to try to get us to grow, a bit larger than we are. And I think we're about to the position where we're ready to pull that trigger and try to, at least scale it largely throughout Wisconsin, but primarily, larger demographic than that. So yeah, it's always something. It never ends. In addition to that, just kind of make a note, I think other entrepreneurs on the show, I think it's important too to set goals in different criterias and aspects than just business and entrepreneurship. So recently I've been really trying to focus on setting goals just intellectually, becoming more educated and keeping my health up, and exercising more, and just kind of pushing myself to try new things, because I think we've all pushed ourselves to try new things to get to where we are, but that doesn't mean that you can stop now. So keep pushing ahead and challenge yourself to do some new stuff.
Awesome, Justin. Justin, thanks again for being on the podcast. Really appreciated your viewpoints, your stories, and just how you help.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
So this is the Fractional Executive Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Ryan Kauth. You can get a hold of me at ryankauth.coach. And again, to have great guests on the show like Justin, please follow, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, and share the podcast so that we can grow the show, get more great guests on here like Justin, and that then in turn helps you to grow your business. The Fractional Executive Podcast is produced by the great team at Influencer.tv, Mark Livingston, Adam Marino, Brian Allen, and Chris Dries.